Here we are again for another edition of the Wrap number 46. And I mean, I feel
we're
like
barreling down towards 50.
We're barreling.
Yeah.
Oh man, we need to really get planning for this live episode.
We do.
We need to start really getting this in gear. I feel like I just need to be the guy that calls this out if people are astute observers. And for those 3 people that are watching week to week on the Wrap.
There's 4. I talked to a guy today.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Awesome. 4 people who are watching, and they'll see it and they'll notice, wait a minute, weren't you guys wearing the same clothes last time?
Were we?
Were we? We were, actually. And what we did is we just tried to trick the eye and we switched spots and went back to our original positions.
Yes, but from here on out, we're going to talk like we're into next week already.
Oh, yes. We're into next week. But we had to do that because this guy right here going on vacay next week, so I am not calling
But don't try to loot his house because by the time this is out, he's already home.
Yep. I'm already home. Anyways, on vacay for 4 people. 4 people watching. It really doesn't matter.
It only takes 1 though.
Oh, it does. That shifty character. Dan Milborn. Dan Milborn shifty.
Do that.
Anyways, we are moving along today. Our last week in the story of Moses.
Yeah.
My friend, you're preach. You preach.
Would have preached.
You would have, are going to be, had preached.
I'm so confused.
It's so confusing to try to do this ahead of time. But anyways, we're going to continue on with this story.
I preach about
You're
Moses.
Preaching.
Yes.
You preached.
Yeah.
Preach about, whatever, all that stuff.
I done preached.
You done preached about Moses and the 10
10 Commandments.
Epic moment. You were telling me your favorite part of the story. What was your favorite part of the story? You were telling me the line today where the people say...
Yeah, the people said, Moses, tell God to talk to you because if he talks to us, we're just going to die.
It's about like your kids coming to you and you're like, Dad, you speak to Mom because if we do, she gonna kill us. She gonna kill us.
Maybe that's why they said that.
It's a direct translation and correlation.
I mean, if you think about what they saw, I mean, when Moses goes up to Mount Sinai and there's this grand cloud with
thunder,
a thunderstorm,
lightning, fire, all the kinds of stuff. You're like, you have fun with that, Moses. We're going to stay over here. There. Not to mention, before they even approach Mount Sinai, they have to go through this big, cleansing ritual ceremony where God's like, do not come any closer. Don't even let the animals...
you will die.
Or you will die. You let the animals on the mountain, they'll die too. And it's like, I think we're just going to stay over here, all right? So, like I said, this big epic moment in the life of Israel, which really... to me, sets the course for the rest of the Old Testament.
Because God's getting ready to lay the groundwork. Here's what it means to be holy. To be holy.
To be a covenant community. Right. It does. It sets the entire foundation for the rest of the Old Testament. We talk about the law. This is it. This is the moment. Exodus 20, law moment. This would be literally laying down the law.
Exactly what he did.
It's what he does.
Twice, because Moses broke the first set.
Yes. Well, yes.
We don't get into that, but
we won't get into all of that. Here's what really interests me about the 10 Commandments, and on 2 different what I call poles, is we either have a tendency in our society, and I see a little less of this more and more each year, it feels like, but people who are so just invested in and so they live or die by these 10 Commandments. Or we have on the other polar opposite of it is whatever. That's old news, dude. We do. So I think what we really should talk about today, probably need to spend some time. We're not really going to get in the nitty gritty. We're not going to list out every commandment and are you following
I'm prepared to talk.
You're prepared to lay those out. I'm are you following this one? I think we should just pull back and we're what was God doing here that is still important for us to understand today. And since you're the man on this, you're the preacher, dude, I want you to maybe speak a little bit on the importance of these commandments today. Because certainly we know as those who are on the other side of the cross and what Jesus has done, we don't live under law. But Jesus also says these words, doesn't he? He says, I didn't come to do away or abolish the law. I came to fulfill the law. Right. To its fullest. That's what he's pointing all the way back to Exodus 20 and the giving of it and saying,
and we'll get to this too. I mean, Jesus, when the Pharisees try to trip him up, they're like, well, which one of these laws is more important, Jesus?
Yeah.
And he just basically gives them a Cliff Notes version of the 10 Commandments.
Yeah.
Be like, it's all important.
So this is what I say is number one, these commandments, although some people may think these are relevant in our world today, Jesus fulfills them. He is the greater law, the greatest law. And to me, here's the thing, like I usually play this game, I usually operate in life how this way. If those commandments and those things were important to Jesus, they probably should be pretty important to us. It's not, like I said, he didn't just swipe under the rug and say, all right, now we're doing a whole, like he does. He said, I am doing a new thing. There is a new thing going on here, but I'm not like doing away with this thing here.
I loved what Warren Wiersbe was talking about
Warren
I like his
Wiersbe.
stuff.
He's
I really
so
do.
good.
But I was reading in his B series commentary, right?
Which, by the way, I'm sorry, I got to share this. One of my good friends, my good preacher friends here, knew Warren at least to some level, and so he kind of talked to him. And I think he maybe even he said this, that you ever wonder if Warren Wiersbe, commentator, wrote like a series, a commentary for each book of the Bible, and they were all B something, B-E something. Do you ever think there was a point where he got through and was like, why did I ever start this? Why did I do this? Then he thought, no, this made me a whole lot of money. So
I've not looked at the Revelation one yet, but is it Be Afraid?
Be very afraid. No, I don't know. Anyway, sorry.
That's an aside.
A total aside. But you were saying you love the way that Warren Wiersbe.
He's talking about this law was never meant to save anybody. This law was meant to show people that they need saved. It was just a mirror. It's a guide too. Right.
I think it's Paul who talks about in the New Testament. He says that the law was sort of like a guardian for us, a custody master for us. That it took care of us until we could be fully kind of reunited with our real parents. You know, is kind of the way he puts it. It's a kind of a weird illustration, but it's a neat one too. Is saying that the law kind of washed over us. It guided us until we had the truth of Jesus, the full truth of Jesus, and then we were given over to that. But that's a great.
Just the way of looking at it is, it wasn't a means of salvation. It was a mirror of showing us we need salvation.
It really does. I mean, when you look at these, and I always love this illustration.
Who here hasn't broken one? Right?
Exactly what I was getting ready to say. I just love the illustration of like, could you just like maybe pick? Is there one there that you haven't broken? There's like. I mean, I've not murdered somebody, so cool, I'm awesome on that. But like, okay, so there are 9, you failed. I mean, and the point of it is, because I think Jesus even says this, if you have broken even one of the laws, you've broken all of the laws.
Yeah.
See, I love that. It's a mirror to our hearts and who we are to show us really how lost and how sinful we are. It's not meant to save us, but it's meant to lead us to the source.
It's a measuring stick.
It's a measuring stick to lead us to the source of our salvation. So it's very interesting to me. So, like, give us an idea then. How do we basically look at these 10 commandments? You know, there are some things that, I mean, you even said it. It's supposed to guide us to some things or to some major truths in our lives. What would those things be?
Well, and I think if we just look at what those, we'll go back to that story of Jesus talking to the Pharisees. You know, Jesus, what is the most important commandment? He says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, your mind. And that's the first 4 commandments, right? That's that first 4 of how we relate to God.
Yep. What we call the vertical relationship.
Yes. And then he says, and the second one is like it, love your neighbor as yourself, right? And that's the last 6
commandments,
right? Because if you love your neighbor as yourself, you're not going to steal. You love your neighbor as yourself. I'd hope you wouldn't murder them.
Yes, that's a good thing.
So
covet their things.
Covet their things, right? So Jesus just kind of comes in there and says, look, this stuff is still important.
Yeah. And it's not about this. I think so often we look at the 10 Commandments, and all we see is this: don't.
It's not just a list of rules,
but it's really about do.
Right.
Do this. Right. Like, and if you don't, your relationship between God and between other people, it's frayed.
Yeah. Well, and damaged. I think those 10 Commandments are. I think there's a very purposeful order to them. Because if we don't have the vertical relationship between us and God right, it's impossible to have that horizontal relationship between us and others.
And really vice versa, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, either way.
If you don't, I mean, what's it in 1 John, I believe he's saying, and John is talking about, if you claim to love God, but you hate a brother, you don't really love God.
Yeah.
That
goes back to you break one, you break them all.
You broke
Right.
them all. You're violating them all. Yeah, so I think we just tend to do that. Is like it's a big list of don'ts, and it's like how big of a drag is that, man? It's like it's not. It's really about do this. Like if you want to be my people and a community of believers, this is what it looks like. And again, it's right. You know, like it's hard to be like, okay. Again, they asked Jesus, which one's the most important? Yes, all of them. But I think, really, honestly, that first one, that's why it's there. You're right. There is a natural order to it. They each play off of each other, and that first one is what? You shall
have no other gods before me.
And again, what we've been talking about so many times throughout this whole process and reading the story from Genesis all the way to Revelation, and here we find ourselves in Exodus, and towards the end of it, is the same thing we've been talking about all along. The tendency of us either to take on other gods or to put ourselves in the place and the position of God. Yeah. And we talk about that so often. But again, I think that's why he leads out with that.
Something I was reading, they pointed out, I think it was the Wiersbe again, but he pointed out that in that first 3 verses where it's talking about, you shall have no other gods before me, it repeats the phrase, the Lord your God, like 5 times in that 3-verse section.
Yeah, don't miss that.
He's like, this is really just, this is God reiterating, this is important. This isn't just a list of, suggestions.
No, they are not suggestions.
This is a commandment from God himself. And so it was really remember who this is coming from. Yeah. This is important.
And this is the toughie of it, is it's a really great insight there, is why in the world would God not give us 10 suggestions? 10 maybe think about this, 10 commandments.
10 great ways to live.
10 great ways to live a successful life.
Sounds like a Cosmopolitan front cover.
It's not that. They're not suggestions. They're not maybes. They're do this.
They're imperatives. Yeah.
They're imperatives. And the reason is because God knows that every step of the way, Israel would struggle with those things. Every step of the way, we as modern followers of Jesus Christ would struggle with those things.
I mean, Israelites were coming out of Egypt that was, they had a God for every day of the week. Like, everything had its own little God. And so God, first and foremost, saying, look, I'm it. That was huge for them, and I think that was going to be one of their biggest struggles, is making him the only God.
Yeah, not even coming out of Egypt, but by this point, or getting close to, they're getting ready to come into Canaan, into the promised land.
Which was even worse.
Which is even worse, because you didn't have just one nation, Egypt. You had multiple nations that were doing the very same thing. Yeah. It's why he stresses so often. But even before he says, no gods before me, he talks about this concept of the people that you are going to go into this land and are going to be around you do horrible, unspeakable, despicable things. And it's all because of their inability to put me in the proper place. Right. They have all their other gods. They do all these things to please the gods. It doesn't work out. And he says, and the reason why he says you're going to go in and you have to displace these people and, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in the upcoming week, destroy them, utterly destroy them. Yeah. Is because he understood the seriousness with which they would be tempted to worship those gods and to act like them and to live like them. And guess what happened?
They did that.
They did the exact thing that God knew that they were going to do. And the reason he said you need to completely flush them out of this land. And what did they not do? They did not completely get rid of them out of the land, and it became the thorn in their side hundreds of years later. Yeah. It will lead them into exile out of the promised land. And I don't know. This is getting way ahead, but I'm just I can't help but just start to think ahead. But all this time, for hundreds of years, you have been given this promise of this land, this place, and you're like, I finally got it. It's like a gift that God has given. Yeah. And then because of your stupidity, gone.
Yeah, because you
See ya.
can't put God in his rightful place.
That's all he's. I mean, he's
Well,
basically
and springboarding off of what we talked about last week in the wrap with the perspective problem. If we aren't putting God in the right spot in our lives, our perspective is going to be skewed.
It's out of whack. Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's what God again tries to remember who I am.
Yeah. And I think we have such an issue with that, and I think that's one of the biggest issues with 10 Commandments is like, well, how dare you tell me what to do?
Yeah.
Like, God is not being mean, angry, senile grandpa God up in heaven and like, I'm just gonna be the killjoy and everything. No, he does this from a place of intense and deep love and care because he knows how feeble and frail and fickle, I can't think of another F word, sorry. No, just kidding. Let's stop there with that one.
Yeah.
Feeble and frail and fickle we are, and he says, I have to let you know this is how life is meant to be lived.
Yeah.
And again, anytime that we step out of that and think, well, I know better. I know how to do this way better than that, is the very moment that we fall flat on our face and we end up in points of our own destruction.
Yeah.
And God,
we talk about so much about Satan and how he destroys, and I think a lot of times it's our own doing. It's not necessarily Satan has. Yes, he is the destroyer.
He just uses.
He just uses our own
against
weaknesses.
us is what he does.
I mean, we do enough on our own.
Yeah.
We don't. We don't necessarily need his help to destroy things.
No, not at all. And so, like I say, that's why I think it's so important with these 10 Commandments to really focus in. And not necessarily say, well, which ones am I doing well? Which ones am... Because again, people do that to Jesus in the New Testament, don't they? Be like, Jesus, I have followed all the commandments since I was a little boy. And
Jesus said, well, that's great. Go sell everything.
Yeah, I mean,
And that's not in the 10 Commandments.
Jesus is always great at that, is like, okay, cool, so you're super moral and everything. That's not the point of 10 Commandments, to be super moral and try to perfectly fulfill them. It's like,
and that's
Jesus
the thing.
always takes
we will not perfectly fulfill them. And that's, I mean, that's...
Again, going back, Jesus is the one that says, I have come to fulfill these laws, these
all of them.
Commandments. Every one of them fulfilled in me. Because guess what, guys? Every one of them were meant to point to me. And so I think that we just look at them wrongly when we say, well, if I could just... Maybe if I can get like 7 of the 10, 8 of the 10, maybe 9 of the 10, Because I know
God does not grade on the curve.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't grade on a curve at all. He says, here's the deal. You can keep all of those, but you're breaking one. You're toast. And we look at that and then people will be like, well, what's the hope in that? I mean, we have to be utterly perfect. Because didn't God say that himself? Be holy.
Right.
As I am holy. And we're like, we can't live up to that. You're right, you can't. But we have someone who did.
Yeah.
And we can live our life in him, in Jesus Christ. And that's the hope in all these things. We constantly come back to that and talk about that fact is like, you can't, but he did.
Yeah.
And the greatness of the gospel and the news is he has offered that to you.
Right.
Live the life that you could never live that I live for you. Take on the death that I didn't deserve that was yours, and I give you life.
Yeah.
That's what he says in the gospel on the cross, and because of the power of his resurrection, we raise to that life. And so I think to just look at the 10 Commandments and be like, oh, it's a list of do's and don'ts, or it's a list of a whole bunch of don'ts. It's like that's so trivializes and minimizes what God is really trying to do there. That guys, if you would get on board with this, you're being able to relate to me and to other people around you would be completely restored.
Yeah.
And again, it's what I think about, with Jesus and his life. He was so tuned into that, and he had the right relationship with his Father, and he had the right relationship and loving and a heart for people. Right. It says in Luke at the end of it, and at the end of Luke 2, that he grew in wisdom and stature and favor with God and with man.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, that's 10 Commandments talk right there, guys. He fulfilled it perfectly in his life and what he did in his ministry.
I like to, if you notice too, that he, not only did he say, don't act out on, do not kill, do not murder. But if you have bad thoughts about your brother, then you've broken that. Like, it's not just the letter of that law, it's the heart behind it.
It's a beautifully frustrating thing about Jesus is he always amped it up another level, didn't he?
He did. He just
It's like, and I think what he's trying to show is like, this isn't about murder.
Right.
This is about something deeper within you. This is about anger.
Yeah.
And if you allow your anger to take hold of you, you've already murdered someone figuratively, metaphorically. Yeah. That's the issue here.
Yeah.
We need to stamp out that other stuff. And not, those, what I would say is a lot of stuff you see in the Ten Commandments are just symptoms of that greater problem. And Jesus said, I'm going straight to the heart of this and showing you that the problem is what we really need to take at the core. Center problem is what we need to take care of here. And so I hope that helps you to see these commandments a little differently, to see this concept of the law differently, that it's really about helping us to have principles that guide us as a community, and how we do that even still today in 2021, as we follow Christ and follow the freedom that He gives us. We still have, some things, like I said, some principles that guide us into life, and most importantly, the big ones are how we live in relationship to God, and we live in a relationship. Love God, love others.
Yeah.
That's a really easy way to sum up 10 Commandments, is that love God, love others.
Yeah.
If you can be doing that in your life, you're on a good path. Are we ever going to be perfect at it? No, we'll stumble at it, but we sure do try in Christ's power, in the Spirit's power, to live those things out. And that's what God is calling us to. That's the kind of community He's looking for. And so, again, thank you for tuning in. We hope that was helpful for you to hear a little bit more about some insight and our thoughts on the Ten Commandments. Until we see you next time, goodbye.
See you guys.